I was 7 years old when my dad sent me to a Church of England school. The first half hour of every school morning was the Bible. I was given a Bible on that very first day uh, in grade one, and grade one to about grade eight was done that way. In high school, in that Church of England, we did not do the Bible so much. Now and again, looked at a few scriptures and so forth, a few spiritual things, but it was mainly from the age of seven, through that grade school that we did the Bible every morning. At the same time, there was a young lady, a young girl in the neighborhood who invited me then to the local congregation, to Sunday school and the local congregation. And so I went. And that's when I started to learn all about Jesus and so forth in that Sunday school. The the years went by, but by the age of about 11, I had read the first chapter of the book of Acts. And it was very clear to me there when I read it that Jesus is going to return again. The angel said to the disciples, as you see him go, in like manner, he will come. And I thought, wow, the Bible, the New Testament teaches that Jesus will return one day. And then one morning before the Sunday school began on one Sunday, you have the hymns and so forth. And I was talking to my buddy next to me, and I said, that the Bible, the New Testament, the Bible teaches that Jesus is going to come again back to this earth. And there was an adult standing by. He heard what I said, and the shocked look on his face, it was just outstanding. He just had this shocked look and looked down at me with this shocked look as I said those words, because that particular local church did not teach the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, the Church of England, they kind of had it in their catechism. They didn't talk about it, they didn't preach about it, but in their catechism, they did have, the coming again of Christ. But it was in their catechism, so it wasn't openly discussed and talked about in the Church of England or the Anglican Church. And so I knew that Jesus Christ was going to return again by reading that first chapter of the book of Acts. A few years went on. I was about 14 or 15 now, and I was not only attending the Sunday school, but then I was starting to stay for the main service, the 11 o'clock morning service. And a lady one Sunday came up to me after services and said, "This is a present for you, Keith, because you've attended so faithfully with us all these years. I'd like to give you this." And it was a New Testament, but it was a red letter New Testament, which meant that all the words of Jesus were in red. Well, I'd never seen one up till then. I just hadn't seen one produced. The one we had in school wasn't a red letter New Testament. And I just thought this was absolutely wonderful gift that she was giving me, because now I could see the words of Christ just open it up, and there they are in red. And that became very, very close to me, that New Testament. I used to read some of the words of Christ every night before I fell asleep. It was so easy to open it up and just read the words of Christ. So over those remaining teenage years, I read and I read and I read all over the Gospels. And of course, the red letters of Christ speaking in Revelation. And it was just a wonderful thing to have this red letter New Testament. And over and over and over again, during those last teenage years, I read the Gospels so many times. And of course, I read Matthew chapter 24. And that's what we have going to do today, and that's where I got to in What Did Jesus Teach? We've got to Matthew chapter 24. And you know, I read it as a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, and I just read it for what it was. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. Yes, the temple had buildings in it, buildings plural. It wasn't just the temple proper, but it had other things within that temple that Herod built, the buildings of the temple. And verse 3, and Jesus said unto them, see you all these things? Truly, I say unto you, there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Verse 3. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him, saying, privately they came to him, away from all the other crowds, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world, or the end of the age? The disciples had been with Jesus now long enough to fully understand that there was a man's age on this earth, and then there was going to come an age to come, as Paul called it, the age to come, when Jesus would return and would rule this world. And they knew that by now. And they said to him, well, what will be the sign of your coming and the end then of this age and into that new age? And Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that none deceive you. Now here is the first thing that Jesus mentions that is going to be happening shortly before he returns. Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ. In other words, Jesus is the Christ. They will be saying that, I am the Christ, and shall deceive many. It doesn't say the few, it says many here, shall deceive the many. So before Jesus returns, there's going to be a great deception over this world, a Christian deception. They're going to say Christ is Christ, but they're going to deceive the multitudes, the many. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And we certainly had that in the last 120 years. We sure have indeed. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines. Yes, we certainly had those, and still having them. Pestilences, we certainly had those. And we've just had the COVID pandemic. And earthquakes, yes, we certainly had those. Many in the last 120 years, and earthquakes in different places. All these things, verse 8, are the beginning of sorrows. Then, now notice this. It was plain and simple for me to understand this. There's nothing complicated here about it. At 15, 16, 17, I could read this and understand it quite easily, talking about previous to the coming of Christ. Then they shall deliver you. That's the disciples. He's talking to the disciples. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you. And you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. This is clearly a religious persecution. True children of God, true disciples of Jesus Christ are going to be persecuted, some of them even killed, before Jesus Christ returns. It's one of the signs leading up to the second coming of Jesus Christ, a great Christian persecution, and including death for some. And be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then many shall be offended and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets, false ministers, false Christian ministers shall arise and deceive many. We're talking here in the context of Jesus' disciples. We're talking here in the context of Christianity. And many false ministers would arrive and would deceive the many. One of the signs before Jesus would return. Verse 12. And because iniquity shall abound, iniquity, lawlessness, sin, if putting it in blunt terms. Iniquity, sin, lawlessness, wickedness, it's all the same thing, is going to abound. And we see it today. We see iniquity, lawlessness. We see a teaching of the opposite of the 10 commandments of God being in vogue today, where evil is called good and good is called evil. Your New Testament says that sin is the transgression of the law of God. 1 John 3:4, Romans 7:7, James 2:10-12. That is what is sin. The Bible interprets what sin is for you. It is the breaking of the 10 commandments as magnified by the whole Bible. And we certainly see the 10 commandments in many, many ways being broken today. Jesus said iniquity would abound, and the love of many would wax cold. True love of many would wax cold. True love, love as defined by the Bible, well, read the epistles of John, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and it will tell you there what is the love of God, what is true love. You can read also 1 Corinthians 13, say in the Amplified Bible, and it will tell you, amplify you what true love is all about. Verse 13, but he that shall endure through all of this that he just mentioned, and this persecution of the children of God, the disciples of Jesus Christ, he that shall endure to the end shall be saved. My friends, if you are a Christian, you have to endure with it to the end. Whatever might come along in your life, in your personal life, in the world, whatever might come along, you are to endure being a child of God, being a disciple of Jesus Christ. You are to endure right to the end. And if you do, indeed, you will be saved. And the gospel of the kingdom, verse 14, shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Well, the end hasn't come yet, my friends. We're still here. Jesus has not returned. Persecution of true children of God on a huge scale has not happened. There are some parts of the world where, yes, it's you take your life in your hands if you become a Christian. But in the Western world, that is not the case. But there is coming a great time of persecution on the children and the disciples of Jesus Christ and the children of God. It hasn't happened yet. It is to happen. The gospel then is still going forth to the world. It hasn't finished. God is still telling his people and his ministers to proclaim the gospel. We have many ways of doing it today. You're looking at one of them, YouTube. You've got blogs, you've got my blog, you've got websites. You've got all of these means now that the gospel can go to the world, but it is still going. The end has not come yet. So the gospel still must go out to the world. And in God's time, when he figures that it's gone out to the world enough, then these prophecies of Jesus will come to pass. Very simple. You just read this whole chapter, and these verses are to do with the coming of Jesus Christ. That's what the disciples asked him. What shall be the signs of your coming again? The end of this age and into the new age. And he gives them these signs to look for. And one great sign is a persecution of the true children of God.